Hey, I'm Sarah from the Extra Credit Design Club, and today we're going to go over the 6 Gestalt principles and how we can use them to become more effective designers. So today I get to put my communication degree to good use because we are talking about the 6 Gestalt principles. Like I mentioned, these principles, if used correctly within design, can help us to become really effective designers because it feeds into the way that people's brains work. So first we'll cover what the heck Gestalt principles even are and where they originated. And then we'll go through each 6 of the principles and how we can apply them to our designs. One of our most important roles, if not the most important role as a designer, is to be a visual communicator. It is our job to organize information in a way that is so clear that it leads our audience to act. The Gestalt principles are a set of fundamental concepts in psychology and design that explain how humans perceive and organize visual information. The word Gestalt is a German word that roughly translates to either shape or form, and it refers to the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, this adage is something that we have all heard throughout our lives multiple times, I'm sure. That adage comes from Gestalt Psychology, and in order to explain it in a way that is easier to comprehend, it's basically the idea that if you were listening to a melody, and instead of being able to appreciate the melody, the song as a whole, you're trying to single out each individual note. Individually, each note doesn't sound very good, but when you put them all together, that's where you get a really beautiful song that all comes together in a way that's easy to digest, easy to listen to. That is the entire concept behind these Gestalt principles. These principles were developed by a group of German psychologists in the early 1900s. They were trying to make sense of the world around them and how we as humans make sense of the world around us. How do our minds visually process information? Many of these early teachings can be attributed to the psychologist Max Wertheimer. He was one of the first to really flesh out these Gestaltian principles. In 1923, he wrote a study called Laws of Organization in Perceptual Forms. And in it, he defines 6 laws of organization that explains the different ways our brains comprehend information. The first of these principles, also sometimes called laws, is the law of similarity. This law tells us that when elements share similar traits, they naturally belong together. Because our brains are naturally wired to group things that are similar, we as designers need to be aware of that in our designs. For example, if I told you, think of the first color that comes to your mind when I say salt and vinegar chips. Now, if you're anything like me, the first color that comes to your mind is going to be blue, because look at all of these packages of salt and vinegar chips. No matter the brand, they're almost always blue. Sour cream and onion are almost always green. If you as a designer decided to make a bag of salt and vinegar chips that was red, the human brain would not be able to comprehend that those are salt and vinegar chips right off the bat. But the principle of similarity is not foreign to designers. Brand style guides are the perfect example of this law. Brand colors, logos, fonts, illustrations, they're all designed to help consumers tie a product to a specific brand, right? Brands rely on this to make their brand more recognizable. We all know Coca-Cola Red. We all know the Nike swoosh. When you see a pair of shoes and it has a Nike swoosh on it, you immediately know, because you've seen other items that are similar, that those are Nike shoes. So unity is the name of the game when it comes to the law of similarity. By using consistent shapes, consistent colors, By using consistent shapes, consistent colors, consistent typography, you are creating visual harmony. And because similar elements tend to stick together in the mind, you are helping viewers better understand and engage with your design. The second principle is the law of continuity. This law is all about flow and keeping the eye moving. Think of it as a map that guides your viewer through your design. By creating smooth lines and uninterrupted shapes, you're giving your viewer the opportunity to see your design in a way that doesn't cause any kind of interruption into what they're looking at. So what does this mean for us? It means that CTAs, calls to action, should be put in a place that's very easy to get to. You shouldn't have to look all around for it. It should be, if your most important information is up here, you keep going, your CTA is right here. It's going to follow the path that your eye would naturally follow. A good example of this is when you're shopping online and you're looking at a product and then you scroll down a little bit, there's a little section underneath it, kind of part of your flow, that says more items like this. You assume in your brain that these items are going to be similar. They're going to continue what you are currently looking at by giving you similar products. This website has effectively, and quite literally, created a continuation of your shopping experience. Number 3, the law of closure. This law suggests that our brains love to close gaps. Our brain will naturally finish a shape even if it's unfinished. We can see this a lot in logos. The use of negative space can make a logo a lot more interesting, and it kind of helps the viewer feel involved in the logo. If they can look at a logo and think like, wow, I completed that and it wasn't even complete, it's almost like they get like a sense of pride from that. It's kind of like how we all kind of think we're the only ones that know there's that arrow inside of the FedEx logo, even though we all know that it's there. By presenting incomplete shapes, you are giving the viewer the opportunity to use their imagination. Here are some more examples of logos that force the brain to close the gap by itself. This principle is a powerful tool for guiding the viewer's attention and creating intrigue. Next, the law of proximity. This principle states that when you group related objects together, they form a kind of visual bond. This creates a sense of organization and helps the user understand the relationship between different elements. Grouping related elements just creates more order. It helps your viewers feel like they don't have to go running all over the page to try to find what they're looking for. And proximity is interesting because it also has the power to overpower other grouping factors like color or shape. Proximity tends to be the more powerful factor. When things are grouped together, people assume that they go together. You'll see a lot of examples of these all over the place, but the example that I'm going to share with you is this Lego instruction booklet. So in the first column, it tells you these are the Legos that you're going to need. They're grouped together, and by proximity, you know that that's what those are for. In the second column, it tells you you're going to take these Legos and you're going to build them into this structure. Same for the third, same for the fourth, so that you're able to clearly organize which Legos you're supposed to use and when. It just makes the building process so much easier for you when all of the information is organized in this structured way. Okay, the fifth principle is the law of figure ground. This is like creating a spotlight where your product, your image, your main message can shine through and the background just plays a supporting role. Take this Nike ad, for example. I use Nike a lot. They're a good example. You know exactly what you're supposed to be focused on. You know exactly what the message is. The picture is front and center, very clear. The background is beautiful, and you get the idea of what he's doing because of the background. So by defining a clear foreground and background, you're sending a very clear message of what it is that your audience is supposed to be focusing on. If everything is too messy, they're not going to be able to know exactly what your goal is. What is your goal? Your goal is trying to sell a product, invite people to a thing. Your goal is to get people to act. And if they don't know what to look at, they're not going to know how to act. Using that foreground allows you to create a sense of hierarchy within the page. This makes your design much more visually captivating. And this is interesting because figure ground relies on the assumption that your brain knows what's supposed to go in the foreground and what's supposed to go in the background. But sometimes we as designers can manipulate the mind into not quite knowing what to look at. You'll see examples of this sometimes in black and white, but I found this example as well on a book. Here you can see that the boy's head is made up by the wolf's body. And so your brain kind of has to be like, what's in the front, what's in the back, and it shifts between the two. This is a cool approach because it forces your audience to look at your design for even longer. The final law, no idea if I'm gonna say it right, is called the law of prognons. I should Google it. Should I Google it? Okay, let's see if I'm saying it right.
Simple.
Prognons. Okay. Principle 6, the law of prognons, is also known as the law of good gestalt, or the law of simplicity, or the law of order, or the law of symmetry. It goes by a lot of names. But it's basically because this law sums up all of the other laws into one main law, which is that we as humans process information in the quickest way possible. We naturally try to organize what we see. Our brains naturally try to make sense of what it's looking at as quickly as possible. Our brains love pattern and structure, and this principle taps into that innate desire for visual balance. If we as designers can help our viewers by creating design that is balanced, they are more likely to act on our designs. Does this mean that there's no room for chaos in design? No, obviously. We see it all the time that these rules are broken. But the more that we try to stick to them, the easier it's going to be for our audience to make sense of what it is that we are trying to design, what it is that we are trying to say. The most effective visual communication is the kind that does follow these rules. Because if our designs have no sense of organization, our viewers will be less likely or less willing to try to make sense of what it is we are trying to communicate to them. Remember, being a visual communicator is about more than just making something look pretty. It's about organizing information in a way that engages people. And the part that makes it pretty is just the bonus. So the next time you sit down to create a design, remember these rules. Look for areas of similarity. Go with the flow of continuity. Embrace the intrigue of closure. Bring elements closer through proximity. Create those captivating figure ground relationships. and find balance through symmetry and order. This will help your designs not only become visually appealing, but also meaningful and more effective. Well, that's it for the Gestalt principles. Once again, my name is Sarah with the Extra Credit Design Club. If you liked what you saw today, I hope you will consider subscribing. You can also follow us on Instagram, or you can sign up for our newsletter at the link below, and we will see you next week.